Hello everyone, welcome to the Mattoon Corner. You know, 2016 seems like a pretty good year for animation. Shows like Voltron, Legendary Defender, and The Loud House have been very enjoyable, and there are plenty of upcoming shows that seem to show some promise, like Welcome to the Wane and Mighty Magiswords. Plus we've had several announcements of old Nicktoons coming back, like Hey Arnold and Rocko's Modern Life. Albeit in 2017, but that's besides the point. The point is, the future looks bright for animation. But there's one show I'm personally looking forward to, and one that's coming pretty soon.
Look at that sun, look at that sky, look at my sweater vest, I look so fly. Look at that
Milo, Murphy's Law. After the phenomenal success of Phineas and Ferb, Disney decided to go ahead and give creators Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh a new show. When this show was first announced, I was ecstatic. I've already talked about Phineas and Ferb here on the show, and it's one of my favorite cartoons. So having them come out with something new was really exciting for me. The show revolves around Milo, a young boy who's the living embodiment of Murphy's Law. For those of you who don't know what that means, basically Murphy's Law states that if something can go wrong, it will go wrong. Overall, a nice little idea that fits well with the nature of the show, wacky and harmless fun. The whole comparison between this show and Phineas and Ferb seems to be the family-friendly version of American Dad and Family Guy. Two shows that share the same art style and probably the same universe, but still being two different stories. While there hasn't been much information about the show, what we do know about it is pretty cool. We have Weird Al voicing the main character Milo. The show's characters look as varied as Phineas and Ferb's. The whole plot of the first episode is already online. What, you don't believe me? I know the first episode is only coming out in October, but the plot is already out. Okay, I can tell you guys are skeptical, but let me explain. On August 30th, a trailer came out for Milo Murphy's Law, showing only 11 seconds of footage for the new series. But what if I told you that in these 11 seconds, the entire plot of the first episode of Milo Murphy's Law has already been revealed? Don't believe me? Well then, ladies and gentlemen, it's Theory time! So before we look at the trailer itself, we need something to compare it with. We'll be using the first episode of Phineas and Ferb as the example for obvious reasons. Now, the first episode of Phineas and Ferb was pretty much an introduction to the world. We saw most of the main cast, what they do and how they act, and we were presented with a simple episode formula. The running gags, the plot twist, and how everything links together. The show used this to its advantage, so when they decided to try something different, we'd be entertained, because it wasn't something we were expecting. The most notable example was in Dude, We're Getting the Band Back Together, where it was the first time Candace willingly decided to help her brothers with one of their schemes. Well, from what I could gather, the first episode of Milo Murphy's Law will be a bit different. First of all, let's look at the first thing Milo says.
I've got a bit of a reputation.
The way he says it makes it look as if he's explaining his reputation to Zach, the other character in the shot. What's more, if Zach had known Milo beforehand, he probably would have known about this reputation of his. This is further shown by comparing their expressions in the scenes that follow. While Milo seems rather monotonous about most of these situations, Zach seems completely terrified of them. Also, when Milo berates Zach for wanting to get on the school bus, it's highly implied that Zach doesn't know about Milo's definition of fun.
What are you, a tough guy?
From what I could gather, the first episode seems to be when Milo and Zach first meet, or at least when they first start interacting with each other. This is also the reason why Melissa, the main female protagonist, makes very few appearances in this trailer. She appears a grand total of 4 times. She won't join the duo until the second episode, which is something else I'd like to address. Each episode of the show is most likely going to be composed of 2 11-minute shorts, much like its predecessor. That being said, the footage we see here is most likely of 2 episodes and not just 1. So how can we know which one's which? Easy. Notice that there seems to be 2 kinds of scenes here. Ones that take place underground, like in the beginning, and ones that take place on the surface. Melissa only appears once on the surface of the 2 boys, and appears in almost every shot of them underground. It's also notable that the train car we see in the beginning obviously isn't the bus we see later on, so it's pretty safe to assume that these are 2 different episodes. But when I said I knew the plot to the first episode, I really meant the first 11-minute episode, and not the whole enchilada. Now, as for the actual plot of episode 1, well, it's Milo going to school, and dragging Zach along for the ride. But we can go a bit further, simply thanks to this one line.
Does that seem like more fun to you?
Now that I think about it, The whole thing kind of reminds me of a hero's journey, except with Zach and not Milo. Milo meets Zach and he convinces him to go to school with him, since Milo isn't one to go on school buses. However, the whole thing ends up being a huge hodgepodge mess until it eventually becomes too much for Zach to handle, and he eventually complains to Milo about it, who answers with this line.
Does that seem like more fun to you?
Maybe they argue a bit more, but eventually the two reconcile and get out of wherever they are. A sewer, maybe? Anyway, the episode will probably end with Milo and Zach finally reaching the school, with Milo finding a new friend in Zach, and perhaps the interest of a few other students too. Well, that's all I was able to figure out. What do you guys think? Did I land a jackpot, or am I just overthinking this whole thing? Well, only time will tell, really. But hey, that's just my theory. Until next time, everyone, and remember to be cool and be creative.